Hello everyone and welcome to my presentation about the Poise archetype in Limbus Company. Now, let's get started. Now, what does Poise do? Poise allows a unit to crit if they have Poise. Poise gives you a crit chance by the potency multiplied by 5. Therefore, if you have 20 potency, you will always be guaranteed to crit on every hit. Going past 20 potency does nothing. Count will decrease by 1 whenever you land a crit or whenever the turn ends. And crits will do 1.2 more damage than the original damage. Before I talk about the Poise IDs, I want to talk about Poise egos first. Poise doesn't have that much egos to work with. The best we really have are Sunshower Otis and both Blind Obsessions for Ishmael and Ryoshu. But they don't provide as much value as Teleport Dawn for charge or Rhymeshank for sinking. So you can mostly just ignore all the Poise egos. And honestly, you're just better off using more generalist egos such as Fluid Stack Faust or Sunshower Yisang, or egos to buff your sinners like Regret or Mersault. But all in all, egos aren't really there for Poise. Poise doesn't really need any egos to work, since all the IDs can, or most of the IDs can generate their own Poise by themselves. Now here's a list of the IDs that can actually generate Poise in their kit. So that's a lot of people, and those are the IDs we will be getting to in this video. Let's get on with the Yisang IDs first. Now for Yisang, there are two IDs you can run on him. The first being his Picard ID. His Picard ID struggles with gaining Poise potency for his skill 2 crit effects. But if you can get enough potency to consistently crit on his skill 2, you can do a lot of damage with it. That's pretty good. And he can inflict bleed with most of his skills, so he can also throw in some extra status effects as well. Now, for his Blade Lineage ID, it's alright at clashing, though you really need it to be uptight 4 for it to be really good. And you need BL Mersault, because without him, he ramps his passive up really slowly. But once you can get enough voice count for his passive, he can roll pretty high. It's really good. But before that point, his clashing is like alright, but still above average. Now, moving on to Faust. Faust has two IDs that has Poise on it. The first being Yuri, or Lobotomy Corporation Remnant Faust, I believe the ID is called. But anyways, Yuri is actually a pretty good ID. She uses Poise potency to gain haste, which is activated with 2 lust resonance, so you have to build around that. Though it's not really that needed. Her skill 3 is probably one of the best 2-star skills out there, rolling a 26 if you are able to fulfill her conditional, which is really easy since, to my knowledge, effects like burn doesn't forfeit the conditional. So it's really good. Now, for her Blade Lineage ID, she can inflict Red Plum Blossoms on crits because of her passive. And what Red Plum Blossoms does is allow other units to have more crit chance. Thus, you might be able to reduce how much potency you need to get crits off, which is alright, I guess. I mean, like, the bleed effect on it's okay, and then the extra crit damage on it is alright as well. It's an alright effect, I guess. But she really benefits from BL Mersault's buff. And I will say, all the BL members will benefit greatly from BL Mersault. Moving on. Don Quixote. Don Quixote also has two IDs that have Poise with them. Her She Association ID is, to my knowledge, not that great. She's a Season 1 ID, so, you know, not that good. Probably age caught up with it. But the good thing about her is that you can mostly ignore her 50% conditionals, so you don't have to play around it that much, since the 50% conditionals don't really benefit her a lot or enough to weigh out the cost of getting to 50%. Now, her Blade Lineage ID is a pretty good Poise support. Her BL ID can distribute Poise to her team members as long as you're able to get 2 Pride Resonance in the chain. So it's a nice addition to have on your team if you want or if you need more Poise generation. Moving on to Ryoshu. Ryoshu has 3 Poise IDs. Her main ID, her LCCB ID, and her base ID being LCB Sinner. Her main ID is mostly a solo unit because you really want to hit enemies with BM to maintain your Poise count, and you can't really hit multiple enemies that well unless you have fulfilled her AoE conditional on her skill 2 or if you give her multiple skill slots. But if you're able to do that, she can maintain her Poise count pretty well. But to be honest, that goes for any Poise ID that you give all your skill slots to. Now, her LCCB ID is kind of alright, I guess. I mean, like, you have the problem of not being able to get Poise count outside of her skill 1, and her skill 1 doesn't even give that much Poise count, so you also have a problem there. But if you're able to get enough potency to crit on her skill 3, it does an decent amount of damage. It's like a smaller mini nuke when compared to Pyric Gregor later on. Now, her LCB Sinner is an alright budget option since she's free for everyone, but she can't really maintain her Poise at all without any external help from other sources in your team. Now, Mersault only has 1 Poise ID, and oh my god, it's a good ID. BL Mersault is a cornerstone for BL teams since his skills allow all other BL members to roll higher on either their skill 1s or skill 2, while his passive can increase Poise generation and skill power for all of them as well. So, in all honesty, he's probably the best unit for Poise itself. And with Regret, you can increase his coin power even more, so he's gonna be doing a lot of damage. Now, moving on to Heathcliff's and his IDs. His Shi Association ID benefits greatly from being below 50% HP for his conditionals because it gives him a attack weight value on his skill 2. So he can dish out some okay damage on it as well. Now, his Picard Harpooner ID is a good tank, and it has a really cool interaction with BL Mersault, since if you lose with Yield My Flesh on him, then Heathcliff will be able to gain offense and defense level ups because Mersault will obviously get hit. And he also benefits a lot from assist attack as well because his Poise generation, let's just say, not that great. Now, we have Ishmael's IDs, one of which is very important for the Poise team because of what it can do. That being the Picard Captain and her ability to grant assist attack to her teammates. Assist attack allows the teammate to reuse their skill 1 if you get lucky enough and if you have Pride Resonance activated. So, what does this do? It allows other people to get more Poise on their skill 1s and maybe even potentially fix their Poise generation if they were lacking prior. It also grants them some buffs if you are able to get Pride Resonance on them. Enough Pride Resonance, I think it's 4 Pride Resonance, and you get even more if you are able to make that an absolute resonance. She also has some bonus SP regeneration with her passive, which procs on kill, and if you have 3 Pride Resonance in the dashboard. Now, moving on to her two-star IDs. The first one being her Shi Association one. That ID, it's one of the best 2-star IDs out there. That ID also benefits from being below 50% to proc conditionals, even more so than Shi Heathcliff. So that's a good thing. Now, lastly, is her maid ID, which honestly is more so like a syncing ID that uses Poise to apply syncing more so than a Poise ID, so I'm not gonna get into her that much. But I think she'd be better played in a syncing team rather than a Poise team. Now, Rodion has 2 Poise IDs, both of which not being that great. Her Kurokuma clan ID is a mixture of both Poise and Bleed, with Sky Clearing Cut, her skill 3, dealing a good amount of damage if she crits on it, as well as applying 10 bleed potency on top of it, which is pretty good. But she is not worth running for that skill 3 alone. Her Sway Association does not fare much better. That ID has a problem with gaining poise because you need to build shield up beforehand to be able to get poise on her, and her shield ramp up time is not that good. And she also has terrible coin power on her skills, so her clashing is even worse. But yeah, Rodion isn't really worth running in a poise team at all. Now, Sinclair has 2 poise IDs, one being absolutely amazing, the other one being a budget version of Mersault's ID. Not even a budget version, like irrelevant, essentially. Now, his Sync Association ID is, if you guessed it, the better one. That ID has amazing clash potential if you are able to meet his conditionals. And he has a very unique way of gaining poise potency on his skill 3. So how you play him is basically you get poise count using his skill 1 and 2, and you get enough poise count to where it gets converted into poise potency for his skill 3, so you can click crit on it and deal pretty good damage. Actually, it's a 3 coin skill, so it does amazing damage as well. It also applies fragile on the first coin, if I believe myself. So all the rest of his coins are gonna do massive damage. The only caveat is that he must be the only one that is targeting that skill slot. But that does not mean that... Okay, cut this. Now, his BLID is kind of sad. It's yeah, I mean, what can I say that's good about this ID? Like, just use Sync if you have him, or just don't use Sinclair at all. BL isn't worth it. Yeah, that's basically all I'm gonna say about it. I mean, like, his claim their bones can do okay damage, I guess. Yeah, it's not even worth it. Don't ever think about running BL Sinclair. He can't get poise count, potency. It's a mess. Moving on, we have Otis. Otis has 2 Poise IDs. Her first one being her Sync Association one, which is pretty good. I mean, it has a high clashing power with her skills. And she can also roll the highest dodge in the game if you are able to fulfill her conditionals concerning poise on it. And I guess I have to include this because technically she can gain poise on that ID, which would be Magic Bullet, but it's barely a poise ID. You need burn to gain poise on that ID, so like no. Like it's not a poise ID. Don't run Magic Bullet in a poise team. And now finally we have Hook Gregor. Hook Gregor's skill 3 can be a decent nuke. I mean, like, it's an extra 200% more damage on his last coin if you are able to fulfill all his conditionals. And it is highly unlikely for you to run out of bullets, since his skill 3 is the only skill that uses up bullet. And you have 7 of them. So unless you have like 200 hours to spend on getting to 200 turn count, then you're not gonna run out of it. And he also benefits from assist attack for better and faster potency and count generation. Oh, and he also has bleed on his skills, and his conditionals require bleed to be met. So he's really more so like a solo unit. Like, he doesn't really need anybody else to help with him fulfilling his conditionals and him fulfilling his damage. But it would be nice if you had some of the Picards to help him with his bleed generation for his conditionals. Now, before we get to the conclusions, I want to recommend a couple of teams. Though note that these teams are pretty expensive, even without egos. So keep that in mind. You can mix and match whatever Poise units you want, but these are just my recommendations, so you don't have to listen to me if you don't want to. Anyways, so my first team suggestion would be my favorite, which is Absolute Pride Resonance, which works by having Ishmael proc her assist attack every time it is online. And because almost all Poise IDs have some sort of pride that they can access, proccing assist attack should be relatively easy for you to do in this team. This means that this team works well with a lot of BL members because they have a lot of poise, or not poise, they have a lot of pride on their skills deck. And the Picard IDs, because, I mean, they were meant to be together. Like, they complement each other, right? The other two Picard IDs have trouble with building Poise. And Ishmael kind of helps alleviate that. But the only problem with this team is that you don't really get a whole lot of other resources other than pride and a little bit of envy because of all the Picard IDs and some of the BL IDs also have envy in them, so you're kind of thirsty for all the other sins as well. But to our second team, we have the BL Purist, which just uses all the BL IDs to maximize the buffs that BL Mersault can give to all of them. The only problem with this is that you have to use Blade Lineage, Sinclair, and Otis, who are, as we know, not the best IDs, or if you don't know, now you know. But there's a silver lining to this team where you can generate all of the Sin resources, so you do not really need to limit yourselves in terms of egos. Now, what are my thoughts on Poise? Poise is the worst archetype in Limbus Company at the making of this video. With all the support it has gotten in Season 3, it still isn't enough for it to compete with other options. Yes, I know Tremor used to be widely regarded as the worst archetype in Limbus Company, but with all the different Tremors we are getting, it is slowly, no, it's not even slowly, it out damages Poise in every single way. I think every every different Tremor except the normal one, obviously, out damages Poise one way or another, which sucks. And above that, none of the egos that we have for Poise actually synergize all that well with Poise at all. It doesn't do anything interesting with the Poise archetype, and it's just better to run regular, more generalist egos over it because of that. But if you are willing to play a Poise team, you will have fun seeing the highest numbers that you have seen in your entire life. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I hope I can see you again next time. Bye!